president of the local I'm president of the local League of Women Voters, Columbia, Boone County. And this is a special noon election program on the park sales tax, which will be on the Tuesday, November 2nd ballot. I have the great pleasure of introducing our guest presenter speaker for today, Mike Griggs, who is a native Columbian and the only Parks and Rec director to have grown up and enjoyed Columbia's Parks and Recreation programs as a youth. He also was a college-age seasonal employee, a volunteer coach, and full-time staff member. He has over 37 years in the Parks and Recreation profession, serving as Columbia's sports supervisor, director of Sedalia's Parks and Rec department, Columbia's Park Service manager, and assistant director. He became only the 5th director of Columbia's Parks and Recreation department, and that was in 2014. And I also want to mention that I first had the pleasure of meeting and working with Mike way back in 1999 when I led the effort to save Stevens Lake Park. And then in 2000, we joined with the Parks Department in the city to campaign for and pass the first park sales tax back in 2000 that helped not only pay for Stevens Lake Park and in the improvements we have there, but for trails and parks since then throughout Columbia. So this is a parks tax that's been around since 2000. Before I turn the program over to Mike, I want to mention that if you have any questions, please enter them in the chat feature and we'll try to get to them towards the end of the program. And also please mute your Zoom while you're listening so we can just hear the speaker. And with that, I'll turn the program over to Mike Griggs. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Barbara. Yes, it's amazing when you think about how long this park sales tax has been in effect since you've got started in it. And I really can't imagine our park system without it. So you've done a great job of introducing our program. And so I'll just jump right into it. You know, we do have 2 park sales tax. We have a 1/4 cent, 1/8 cent is permanent, and of course 1/8 cent is renewable. And as Barbara mentioned, the renewable, the permanent one, it was all passed and worked on. Barbara did all the legwork in the 1999 and 98, all that leading up to it. And it was really to help protect Stevens Lake Park. And once that was done, after that was purchased, then we went out and looked at the Crane property and was able to acquire that because we showed a need for another Cosmo Park in the southeast side of Columbia. And since then, that permanent tax has been used to help fund our department operation-wise, because everybody kept thinking, if you're going to be building these parks, where's the funding for maintenance come from? And that's where that does. It's that permanent 1/8 cent tax. Right now, we start off with about $500,000 a year going into our operating fund. Now we've, of course, as we've grown with staff and as general fund money got cut, we've replaced it with the park sales tax. So now we're roughly about 2.9 million, which is roughly what the permanent generates a year. And so, of course, where did that come from? Beforehand, that came from the general fund. You know, those are the funds that we competed along with the police, fire department, health department, public works, city manager's office, all those other general fund departments. But now that we have our park sales tax, we don't have to compete with them. So it frees up those general fund dollars for those departments. The important part that helps keep our department operational and growing and all that is our renewable portion. That was initiated at the same time. We've renewed it 3 times since then, 2005, 10, 15. And in 15, we added a year. So the previous ones have been 5 years. In 15, we went 6 years. And it wasn't any great insight on why we did 6 years. And when I look back now, I just can't imagine us trying to do this in November of last year with such a very acidic vote that was going on a year ago. And so we're glad that we're on another year without any of that campaign rhetoric that's been going on. The tax does expire in March 31 of 22, and it roughly generates about $3 million a year. And it does all of our capital projects and land acquisition. It's really our primary source. This time we went out for 10 years. And why did we go with 10 years? And then we went out and did a citizen survey by ETC. They've been doing city surveys for the city of Columbia for the last 25 years or so. And they did it in early in the January and February of 21. So kind of we're coming off the pandemic. And basically they did 549 surveys, which gave them a 95% level of confidence. And really after, park usage is high, high satisfaction ratings for the parks, maintaining our trails and parks is a high priority. And of course, small neighborhood parks, walking trails, swimming pools, outdoor pools, and nature trails were it. And there was strong support from the citizens on renewing it. When you looked at what they wanted to fund with the park sales tax, the top 5 items were maintenance of existing parks and trails, land for preservation, more trails, both nature and pedestrian and bicycling trails, and of course, working on our 30-mile loop were important to our citizens. When we asked them, hey, how supportive are you if we did this for 10 years, 80% of them responded that they were somewhat to very supportive of that. When we did this survey back in 2014, it was about 55%. So we really saw a big jump in that. And I think that has to do with the level of confidence that we get our projects done. We tell the citizens what we're going to do and we get it done. 9% we're not sure, 5% where they were supportive of 6 years, not 10 years. And of course, 6% says, I'm not voting for any tax. And there's not much you can do with them, but just say, thank you for your comments and move on. Why do we need this continuous funding source? We have 3,500 acres, 75 parks, 8 major trails, 13 facilities, and 42 other buildings like concession stands, picnic shelters, things like that. And so we're really all over the city of Columbia. And really each park is like a little mini city. We have to take care of our own infrastructure. We have to take care of our utilities, our sewer system, our water system, our electrical system. All that has to be done by us. And so, for example, a park playground, we've got to replace about 2 to 3 playgrounds every year because they age out. They get to be about 20, 25 years old. They need to be replaced. So that's what we have to do. We have over 2.2 million square miles of parking lots that need to be maintained and over 5 miles of roads that we have to maintain as well. Other asphalt include like tennis courts and pickleball courts. That is important. While you can play on the picture that's in the upper left-hand corner, that's not what our citizens expect. They want to be on the nicer courts in the bottom. And of course, restrooms, my goal has always been, I want to make sure our park restrooms are such that my wife would be glad to use them. And so that's why we need to make sure that they're well maintained and clean. Our utilities are important. Not only do we need to upgrade our service, but we need to make sure we convert our LEDs, use of that so we can provide better illumination for our parks and trails and parking lots as well as help reduce our operating costs. Shelters are a big thing. We have a lot of steel shelters that'll last forever. However, people don't want to sit at a picnic shelter with birds roosting above you, with bird nests and droppings on the picnic tables. And plus, we found out that our users now have so much more electrical demands. Every shelter rental we have seems like they need 30 crock pots and a popcorn machine, a hot dog machine, and a bounce house all plugged in at once. So we upgrade our utilities as well, so that way we can make sure we meet those electrical demands. Our bridges on the MKT trail, original railroad bridges, all over 100 years old. We've replaced 6. Now, this next ballot issue, we'll do 3 more, and we use that money to match with grants so that we can double the money. So hopefully we'll get all of our bridges renovated or replaced in this next ballot issue. Parks also will increase, home property values. We want to be good neighbors. And the key to this is a well-maintained park. The reverse happens if the parks aren't well maintained. So for example, if the park's not maintained well and it looks, the playgrounds are falling down, basketball goals are bent, then the reverse happens. The park becomes a detriment. We don't want that. The biggest question we get is, why is Columbia growing? why do we need more parks? Well, Columbia is growing. We were at 84,000 in 21. Now we're 124,000. So that's a 47% increase. And more importantly, the city of Columbia, the geographic area has expanded. We're 13.4 square miles larger since 2000. So when a neighborhood comes in, they want to have a park along with that. So we want to make sure we don't want people getting in their car and driving all the way from Southeast Columbia all the way up to Cosmo Park to play on a playground. So we want to make sure these neighborhood parks are where the developments occur. And we have a plan for that. Our master plan that the council approved in 2013 looks at the gaps. Where do we need parks? Where we don't have parks? Where is there something that's not there? And it doesn't have to be a public park. It could be like Highlands, which is a private owned neighborhood park that's managed by that neighborhood association. And really, we do this because people use the park system. 89% use the park system. That's compared to the national average of 76%. And you can see with all the events that are happening on just in this last COVID, our parks and trails were loved to death during COVID. And plus, the other thing is we want to be an economic generator too for the city of Columbia. So we look at sports tourism as that low-hanging fruit that we can do with our park system. And so when the Show Me State games did not play here in 2020, that has a big impact to our hotels and restaurants and all that. So when they came back in, it was really a big boost. We also looked at what can we do in terms of facilities. So we were able to create a cross-country course out at Gans Creek Recreation Area that now can generate a lot of weekends and evenings and become a really nice facility for people to come. This is an image of the 2019 state cross-country where we had over 2,000 runners, almost 10,000 spectators over a 2-day period. And that is something that keeps on going. The Convention and Visitor Bureau estimates that in 19, our tournaments generated about 7.5 million in the local economic impact on tourism. And that's people staying in our hotels, eating in our restaurants, shopping in our stores, buying gas when they go home. So it's a big impact on that. Our reinvestment too, not only do we take that money, the sales tax generates some money, but then we turn around and invest it with our local contractors and businesses. From 2016 to 20, we spent over 10.6 million back with our local businesses. So whether that's a local contractor working on our building our trails, or if it's someone who's doing roof repairs or anything like that, we try to keep that. And that just means more jobs and more recycling those dollars here within the community. What are our community assets and advantages? There was the visioning study that was done here recently in Columbia, looked at sports, quality of life, recreational opportunities, one of the competitive advantages of being in Columbia. And so when we asked them what should we take advantage of, the biggest part was quality of life. And that was really an impact. We definitely saw it. While we always assumed that happened, we really saw it when IBM was looking to relocate their operation to Columbia. We got this nice letter from them saying the city's quality of life, an important factor in our ability to attract and retain employees. And the existing and planned walking and biking trails impressed as a key element of that quality of life. So again, that was a major impact for them. And again, as I mentioned, the Columbian, the city council, we do our ballot issue with a list of projects. We debate them. We started almost 18 months ago coming up with a list of projects by meeting with our user groups, our citizens, doing the citizen survey. Then we take it to council for several rounds of input. And then finally, this council voted on a list of projects. And these are the projects that we will do if the Columbians pass our ballot issue on November 2nd. The categories, we broke them into land acquisition and preservation, trails and greenbelt, maintenance and improvements, new facility and park, and then some annual funding. And of course, we balance that out based on the citizen needs on what they indicated to the survey. So when you look at our projects, they're scattered all over. Every ward's represented, every geographic area of the city's represented by a project or a trail project. And so when we look at the first category, we're setting aside 2.575 million for land acquisition and preservation. So that's going to be all over. We want to acquire land for neighborhood parks, land for trails and green belts, and just for preservation, environmental environmental protection. In the 21 strategic plan, that was one of the action items on continue to dedicate funding for natural area preservation and work with landowners for conservation easements and donations. And we really work hard on that donation aspect. When a developer comes in and sets aside land, we want to make sure we get that easement, get that land donated so we don't have to spend money on those kind of projects. We make sure our master plan's updated. And if you can see, like right in the middle there, number 3, that's Whitegate. We've been trying to get a park in Whitegate since 1994. And we were finally able to acquire that through when Columbia Insurance Group declared about a 3-acre tract of land as surplus. And so we're really servicing that community that never had a park before. And so that's really going to be something good for them. Preservation of natural areas. You know, these are all park pictures of images around our park system. And of course, just green space. You know, we can have a neighborhood park, a community park, a very active park like Stevens Lake Park, and it's still a lot of green space that we preserve. And so you can see the different images there. And of course, protecting the environment, working with our stream watersheds, doing community education, doing native plantings, those kind of things that we can do to help protect our environment. And not only that, the wildlife that goes with it. You know, again, we have a lot of photographers that take great photos of the wildlife in and around Columbia parks. And one of my favorite, I should include this, is a herd of deer right on the MKT trail. And so I should make sure I stick that in there because sometimes trails get a bad rap for running out wildlife, and that's certainly not a case. When you look at trails in Greenbelt, you know, we have a list of projects, and I'll go through these projects kind of quickly because I know we don't want to spend too much time on that and get to some questions and answering. But trails are important. 81% of Columbians indicated they used the walking or hiking and biking trail at least once in the past year. The second is nature trails. The third is natural areas, and picnic shelters and playgrounds round up what you've used in the past. So our trail projects are redo the asphalt trail in Cosmo Park, expand the parking lot trail improvements and the lighting at the Grindstone Nature Area. That park's being loved to death. You can see cars are parking up on the road and everywhere. You know, it fills up a lot. And really one of the big one is continuing our trail from Clark Lane, where we're coming from Stevens Lake Park underneath I-70 up to Clark Lane. We want to take it from Clark Lane all the way up to Vanderbilt Road there to at the existing roundabout. Then we have a pedway we can tie into that. Of course, replace our bridges. We want 3 bridges to replace. The Perchie Creek Trail is another one. Mike Hood and I talked about how we never thought we'd see the city limits get to Perchie Creek, and that's well beyond that now. And so right now we've got a project that will take it from MKT to Gillespie Bridge Road, and then we'll go from Gillespie Bridge all the way up to Smith Drive, which is kind of Rollins Road extended across Scott Boulevard. And then a big one that we've got added is connecting where Atkins Park and the fairgrounds property. We call it Northeast Regional Park because it's a lot more than just the fairground. City council, we're gonna have to come up with a name for that at one time. So right now we just refer to it as the Northeast Regional Park until we can officially work with city council and coming up with a name for it. But we want to go from that park underneath Highway 63 to Lang School and Lang Park. And then from there, we can use existing pedways all the way down to Albert Open Park. And of course, from Albert Open Park, you're on the Bear Creek Trail. And so now you've really connected a big neighborhood, a big group there to get to the fairground property. Another one exciting is the Colt Railroad from the lumber yard there by Columbia College all the way out to Brown Station Road. Right now, we're showing it as a parallel trail. So that way the city can decide what the future is of the Colt Railroad. Right now, it does not come in past I-70 because the bridges need to be repaired or replaced. So right now, we're just proposing it as a parallel trail. If they decide the railroad's never going to go back downtown again, then we could really go further. We could take that $3 million and really take that trail and run it much further along than what we're currently proposing because we won't have to build 2 separate bridges over Business Loop and I-70. Stevens Lake Park, you know, that's become a really popular trailhead. And Barbara probably sees that fills up weekday mornings, sometimes early in the morning where people get on, they're coming in. And so we want to expand that a little bit, add a restroom in that area. It's probably one of the biggest requests we get is a restroom and more lights on that side of on that southeast side of Stevens Lake Park. So we're looking, trying to get that, and as well as some other park amenities on that side of town. And so really our goal on this one is look at these trail projects and connect further up northeast Columbia to our trail system. That's been a community that's been underserved, and we want to make sure we tie into that. So we want to maintain our status as one of the better trail systems in the state of Missouri. And of course, one of that is the 30-mile loop around Columbia. I mentioned that earlier, where we can use the Perchie Creek Trail, the Bear Creek Trail, the Hinkson Creek Trail, and of course the MKT Trail. By creating this loop around Columbia, that would be over 30 miles, where you can have events where no one would ever have to cross a street or be on a roadway to do it. And we think that's great. With the proposed projects we're doing in this ballot issue, we will be at 19.1 miles completion. And so we're getting there. And then if we could take some of that money and apply for grants, we can further expand that 19.1 miles as well. And of course, our biggest chunk of money is being spent on taking care of what we've got, the roads and parking, our annual maintenance for those projects like resurfacing the tennis court complex for $25,000, stuff that we can't do in our operating budget, but we need to have some of that funding. That's what that's for. And we like to go in and we want to be above and beyond the basic ADA compliant. So if ADA says you need a 6-foot access or walkway, we want to make sure we're at 8 or 10 feet. And so we want to make sure that we make Columbia's parks and trails to be as accessible as possible. And there's no need for us to have a park when there's a school playground that can service. And so we want to invest with the school system and say, hey, we'll improve your playground. You just keep it open when you're not in session. And so that's really a benefit to us. So that's $20,000 a year for a partnership with the school district. And we got all these projects here, and I'll go through them fairly quickly. Redoing some of the art, like primarily the water play structure and the flooring in that area to get that done. Some improvements to Waters Moss Memorial Wildlife Area, specifically look at the Jones House, how we can make that usable. A lot of work at Albert Oakland Park to redo some of the shelters, add tennis courts, pickleball courts, redo the pool bathhouse. And then some sports complex, our users in our sports groups, whether it's youth softball, baseball, or adult slow pitch softball, make sure they're up to speed with Rainbow Softball Center, Atkins, and Timmy. And then, of course, we have some second phase projects like Battle Park. We're working out there now with phase 1, so we want to continue with phase 2. And this would be like more of a Cosmo Bethel Park on the northeast side of Columbia. And then Clary Shire, working with a farmers market. That facility has been tremendous. Voted number one farmers market in the country. And that really is kudos to the groups that do that, CCUA and the Columbia Farmers Market. And we can help with that by funding some improvements to that. Cosmo Bethel, redo those original 4 tennis courts that have beyond the crack filling that we've done. They're 20 some odd years old now. And so we need to redo that. And then we look at where can we utilize some existing areas in our park system for some different activities. We've always had the Rhett Runs mountain bike course. Well, now we see a lot of other things like a pump track that kids want, cyclocross, they want some jumps. And so we've been working with our biking community on how we can improve those biking areas in that northeast side of Columbia, making use of the old landfill, that area that sits back there pretty much basically unused right now. And the Cosmo Park shelters, again, I mentioned the shelter needs, doing it. Burford Shelter, is one of the original wooden ones. The supporting are bad. We definitely want to renovate Lamb and Nichols Shelter as well. And then, of course, we've got some old buildings that we need to do. We're probably never going to touch this old hangar, but we need to do the roof. As many people know, Cosmo Park used to be the old airport in Columbia. And so we want to keep that history. We want to recognize that. So we don't ever want to, we're kind of glad that old airport is bleeding through the paint now. And so we'll kind of maintain that as it is and keep that going. But we don't want the building to fall apart from lack of maintenance either. So we want to make sure we improve that area that's in there. And of course, we do want to work on our sports field house. We opened it up, and then the pandemic hit. We were closed for 8 weeks, right in the middle of basketball season. Even with that, we were still within $13,000 of breaking even in our first year of operation. And so had we had those 8 weeks, we certainly would have been breaking even on that. And so that's been a really nice. We want to expand that facility. So once you get from 4 to 8 courts, now you can really start getting some of those larger tournaments that come into Columbia. And so we have 1.5 million set aside for that, making use of other cities' funding for the rest of that project. And then, of course, working on Douglas Park, the skate park expansion, redoing the bathhouse there, and just some other shelter renovations. Field Park, do some renovations in the neighborhood park there. And then at the Gans Creek Recreation Area, right across from Tolton High School, we want to create a shelter, playground, parking lot in that facility, kind of a nature trail in that area, so that we can have some more of those recreational amenities, that passive use there at Gans Creek Recreation Area. And then we want to look at what we do with the Lake of the Woods Recreation Area. You know, that pool's the original country club pool. And so it needs to be renovated a little bit, you know, reduce some of that area. And so we're looking forward to getting that one done. And of course, the memorial. The memorial was designed by an artist who lived in Arizona, who the weather in Arizona is a whole lot different than the weather in Missouri. And so the winters have been rough on that memorial. It's been tough. And so we've been working with Sarah Dresser at the at the Cultural Arts Department about what can we do. So we put some money in here with the idea that maybe something else can be there. How can we recognize what Dr. Martin Luther King has done with maybe a more significant impact? At one time, this was one of the largest memorials for Dr. King. And so maybe we're not that anymore. So maybe we need to see what we can do to reclaim that title again and do something in addition to what we have there now. And of course, Rock Quarry Park, you know, replace that playground, tennis court, some parking lot renovations. Magnolia Falls, we just redid that, or we just started to develop that park. And the second phase is fixing this old low water bridge so that they can access the park from the neighborhood side. And then some renovation at Rothwell Park, Shepherd Park, and Strawn Park, where our disc golf course is located, Harmony Bend, one of the nation's top premier disc golf courses. Right now, if it floods, we can't play disc golf there if it has heavy rain. We recently had a PDGA professional disc golfers tournament. We had 400 golfers from 36 states and 3 countries came into Columbia. They were all masters. They were all 40 and over, and they stayed a week and played. Thank goodness we didn't have any rain, so we didn't have to worry about moving the tournament, but we want to improve these low water crossings with some pedestrian bridges. And of course, Stevens Lake Park. It's hard to imagine, Barbara, that we need to redo those old playgrounds. It seems like we just put them in. And so it's time for that. You know, our staff talks about, we need to repair old and dilapidated playgrounds. And I'm thinking, I put those in. You know, are you referring to me or the playground? So it's cycling through, and we want to improve the amphitheater. We really want to cover that stage. You know, we want to add some permanent seatings along down, some chairs and all that. We really want to make that amphitheater a really usable facility to do it, as well as work with the spray grounds there in the beach. Twin Lakes, you know, we want to redo that, see how we can get that to be more usable. You know, that water play area has kind of outlived its life in terms of functionality. It's really hard to find staff to guard a beach, guard that kind of an area at Twin Lakes. So we can go with the spray grounds or something where we don't need a lot of staff. It really makes it a little bit more user friendly. West Winds Park's another neighborhood park for renovation. And then we have our category of our new park and facility development. And as I mentioned, you know, we acquire the neighborhood parks in the 2015 ballot issue, or we acquire them through donation. And then in the 21 ballot issue, we have plans to develop them. So that's why you see Whitegate on the left, Creek Ridge, which was a combination donation purchase in the middle, and then Silver Mill, again, another combination of donation and purchase on the right. These are small neighborhood parks that we'll develop as part of this ballot issue. Then we have a larger, the Gates Nature Area, which is down south by off Route K there by Cascades neighborhood, where we can, develop a 65-acre nature area. Basically, getting a playground and some connectivity to the Cascades Park. But really, it's just going to be a natural area, providing access to that. And I mentioned the fairgrounds, and this is probably our biggest ticket item on our ballot issue. And that's over $3 million to look at the fairgrounds with a goal of how can we do 4 synthetic turf fields, improve the Coliseum and the SAP building, get some parking infrastructure, and then look at what we can do there to help make that a great site. The fair held their first fair there this past summer. They had record revenues, even though they didn't have a demo derby. They didn't have all the horse shows that they normally do, but they still were able to generate record revenues and attendance. I think Columbians were just excited to have the fair back in town. And that was a great venue for that. So we want to work with them on the fairground, how we can keep the fair going, and then add that. And we found that we have really one of the best natural turf soccer fields and sports fields in Missouri. But when tournament organizers think there's rain coming and we may cancel, they move their tournament to Boonville. And so by us adding 4 synthetic turf fields, we can keep that tournament here in Columbia. They could start playing on our synthetic fields, and then as the wood dries out, they can move to our natural grass fields. And so we think that will be a big boon to our sports tourism as well in doing that. We just got to find a name for that. Sinclair is some park property by Warner Middle School. We're working with the school on developing really most of that property that's really just north of Warner Middle School. So while we agree to buy some of the 4-acre for a park, really we're going to be able to utilize a lot of that park, that school for that. And again, work with them on how we can maybe we don't put a playground where we don't have to take out trees on our property. We put the playground and work with them on the school property. So again, that'll be a nice little benefit for them. And then I mentioned donation. We have been in talk with some neighbor, husband and wife, who have a little over 200 acres that they're considering donation to the city of Columbia for a kind of a nature park up in that northeast side of Columbia. So we want to have some funds available in case that happens. And we don't really want to call them out yet because they're afraid every developer in Columbia will start calling them if people know that they're wanting to donate land, and they just don't want to have to deal with this right now. The husband's is medically ill right now, and so he's fighting through some issues, and so they're looking to make this donation at one point in time. And then, of course, we always work with school district, whether that's partnering with them. We set aside some money for either partnering with them on the Boone County Nature School, that project they're doing south of Columbia, or if that doesn't work out, if say the council says, no, we don't want to invest in a project that's way south of Columbia, we're going to do something with them, whether it's a sports facility or something like that. But really, we like the idea of that nature school, that we can use it for our day camp during the summer. And so we'll just have to work out the details on that. And then the same thing, the downtown park project. We're proposing some funding for the development of the Ameren UE property. And so if all the hazardous materials are checked and cleaned and there's no issues and council agrees to acquire the property, then we can proceed with that, then we would do that. But say if something happens, that the testing comes bad, then we can utilize it for maybe Flat Branch Park or some other improvements downtown. We also have some annual funding. It's really not a specific project or a park or anything like that. So for example, when we build a cross-country course with some of these, we got to have the equipment to maintain it. Our cross-country course is virtually a linear athletic field. It's got irrigation, it needs to be maintained. Premier athletes run on it. Our cross-country course is hosting the SEC Conference Championships. The end of this month, we've got the Missouri State High School State Championships for 5 years. And then in 2022, we're having NCAA regional. And in 2025, we're going to be hosting the NCAA national championships across country. That'll be the first time Columbia's ever hosted a national championship. Mizzou's hosted it before, but they've been in St. Louis. So for example, they had wrestling, but they did it at the Edward D. Jones Dome in St. Louis. So this will be the first NCAA national championship in Columbia. And then finally, we want everyone in Columbia to have the opportunity to participate, whether it's a youth in our swim lessons or a family with an ARC membership or signing up for our races or our events or anything. We have a scholarship program where it's pretty simple. It's a one-page form. You're in the city of Columbia and you ask, you can get the money. It's a pretty simple project process. And our goal is to make sure that no one gets turned away from any of our activities. Because this is a 10-year ballot issue, we're not sure how the sales tax will run. You know, for example, what if we pass Wayfair? And so we can collect internet sales. Well, instead of generating 3 million a year, maybe we're generating 3.2 million. And so where's that extra money going to go to? And so we created a list of priority 2 projects for council to consider. And so our plan is to go back to council after 5 years and say, hey, let's evaluate our sales tax revenues. How's it doing? And then let's pull off these priority 2 projects that maybe we can fund these. A lot of them are like second phases, you know, like maybe taking the trail from Lang School all the way down to Oakland, or redoing some, add lights to the skate park in Cosmo Park, redoing like the garden beds in Paquin. You know, a lot of other projects that are very good. They just didn't make that first cut as priority 1. We have a fact sheet. All the information is on our Parks and Recreation website at como.gov. You can just type in search park sales tax and you'll get directed to that site. And I think in kind of wrapping up, really there's 5 key points. It's a renewal. It's not a new tax. So no change to what you pay. The majority of funding is spent on maintaining what we have, because if we don't have it, if that playground has to be removed because it doesn't meet code or it's not safe, then we just remove it. We don't replace it. And, you know, Columbians won't tolerate that very long. Most new development and improvements are designed to recover operating costs or stimulate the economy through sports tourism. So a lot of that money, like at the fairgrounds, will help regenerate income back into the city's coffers. Really, we're the only funding source for land preservation, green space, natural resource protection. And really, we provide parks and programs for Columbia's underserved neighborhoods by doing something in Whitegate, by creating these trails that connect to these areas like along Clark Lane, where we can bring those people there into Columbia. Anything we can do to connect more people to the trail system for easier access and especially for those that are transportation dependent on other means other than a car, that's certainly big for us. So I felt like I ran through that like a racehorse, but I was afraid I wanted to give some time for questions and answering, and interested to help out now.
Oh, thank you, Mike. That was excellent, detailed. Your dedication and enthusiasm is laudable and wonderful. I think I keep up with in general on parks, but I learned about parks I've never been to. And I think it's really important. At some point in the past, our kids were leaving Columbia, and I think our great parks and rec system is one of the things that are keeping our kids as they grow, living in Columbia and bringing in young people. So thank you for all your work. You were so thorough that I don't know that we have any questions. We do have a compliment for sure. It says, I appreciate the Columbia Park system on a daily basis as I walk down the MKT trail. Thank you to all the citizens who support the parks tax and to the Parks and Rec people. And I know as the sales tax was dwindling, the Parks Department was doing everything they could to maintain the quality of the parks and be very wise on how often they mowed and where they mowed, just stretching your dollar. So thank you. If anyone has a question, enter it now, though. Mike covered so much. I would also encourage people to share it with your neighbors and your friends or anyone you know that might be questioning the parks tax, or in general, not in favor of taxes. It's the one tax that I think most of us use on a daily basis. Feels like our backyard, really. So let's see. There might be another question here, just a sec. Oh, let's see. How does the park system know the use of the different parks and areas?
We did trail counters during the pandemic. We have trail counters so we can help because we use those counts for grants. The other one is really just by observation. For example, you know, like we know we're shelter reservations. We have all that information. We know which shelter is being used a lot. Of course, Stevens Lake Park by far is the number. Gordon Shelter is the biggest shelter that's always used almost every weekend. We have that kind of data, but just generally, we don't have trail counters on every park. We don't have park counters in the parks, but we kind of look at in talking with our staff. For example, our maintenance guys will tell us, like Louisville Park is used all the time, he says. I say, well, how do you know? And he goes, well, we have to empty the trash can about every 3 days. You know, so we have that incidental comment, you know, that you could see that people are using them. You see birthday party balloons and stuff like that shoved in the trash can. You can tell the dog waste bags that we collect out of the dog waste collection centers and stuff like that. So, but you're right, we don't really have a great way. We are working with the University of Missouri, their Parks and Recreation grad program, on some ways that we can count that. Like we did one with the dogs, you know, with our dog parks. You know, we worked with them on dog parks, on how our use of the dog parks. And, you know, we had some great data on what they wanted to see in dog parks and the times of day where the peaks are. And we really didn't see a whole lot of new data. Like we kind of anticipated most of the dog park use was early morning or right after work, weekends. But we did hear a lot of stuff like what they need, like dog wash stations, and some of those incidental items that we might not have thought of.
Okay, we have a comment and another comment and a question. The comment is the Columbia Trail System is one of the selling points that factored into our decision to retire in Columbia. So lots more retirees for quality of life in our park system. And then the question is, I saw an acronym on one of the lists. It's TLRA. What does that stand for?
Oh, sorry about that. It's a Twin Lakes Recreation Area.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, we tend to use a lot of acronyms sometimes because it's a long worded, we have a lot of long name parts.
Right.
Like Columbia Cosmopolitan Recreation Area, you know, we used to call it CCRA, now everybody just calls it Cosmo.
So I want to thank Mike Griggs again. I want to remind people that the election for the park sales tax is November 2nd. If you do absentee voting in person, you can do it up to November 1st at the clerk's office. And our next program will be Lunch and Learn on November 9th, and it will be on family paid leave, which the Kansas City League of Women Voters is doing a study, and they're going to present it to us. And then the Columbia League, the Columbia Boone County League, has an opportunity to adopt their study, as well as the State League. So we'll be doing that November 9th. And again, as soon as it's ready, we'll share the YouTube with everyone to share it and vote on November 2nd. Thank you, Mike, so much for all your work
Oh,
and
thank you
for this
having me.
excellent presentation.
Thank you, thank you.